It's the wild, wild west out here. We saw the game last night. Seattle Seahawks didn't fare too well against the Detroit Lions, but it puts into question who is going to own the NFC West. The San Francisco 49ers have two back to back NFC West opponents in their future. 49ers will play the Cardinals this week, and then they will play against the Seahawks on a short week for Thursday night football. So, what do the 49ers need to do to make sure they get back to the tippy top? Well, they can't do what they did against the Rams because the 49ers are unfortunately already behind the eight ball in the West, but they have an opportunity to now get back on track and get to that number one spot. It's going to be very, very important for the San Francisco 49ers to get that number one seed in the West in order to help their playoff seeding moving forward. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. 49ers had some news today. A player returns, all that good stuff. Excited to talk about it. You guys already know what to do. We already see it in the chat. Drop an SDS. Smash that like button wherever you're watching. And let's get into it all right about now. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. Shout out to the SDS, and of course, shout out to TickPick for sponsoring the channel. And of course, do not forget, make sure you use the code SF9ers for $25 off your ticket purchases. We all go to games, right? Already, TickPick has the lowest prices, no fees, and you get an additional $25 off your purchase when you use my code. No brainer. Tap in with TickPick. But shout out to all of you for tapping in as we get into this discussion about the NFC West and a big game coming up, man. You got to get this one against the Cardinals. You got to get this one right after that on a short week against Seattle. So before we get into that particular conversation, let's talk about some of the roster moves that were made today. I guess it was just one roster move made today, but it was a good one. The San Francisco 49ers officially bring back Jalen Graham. So they signed him off the Washington Commanders practice squad. He was originally poached from the San Francisco 49ers after he did not make the initial 53-man roster. The 49ers actually kept Tatum Bethune over him, who they drafted this year in the 7th round, where they had taken Jalen Graham in the 7th round the year prior. But I'm glad that he's back. I really am, because I do see a ton of potential with this guy as a player. You can see some of the snaps and some of the clips. He went crazy in this preseason game against the Raiders last year. And he really showed a lot of the traits that you love to see with the San Francisco 49ers linebacking core, and what the style of linebackers and things that they're looking for. You can see him just shoot the gap and get this nice tackle, skirts past the offensive lineman, is able to get in there and make a disruptive stop on the play. And you can see in this particular rep, you get a sense of his sideline to sideline speed. He's a converted safety to linebacker. Got the opportunity to speak to him at the combine, actually. And he had discussed how he had watched the 49ers, throughout college, watched Fred Warner. And so he's familiar with what the 49ers are asking of him. So we expect him to be able to fit right in. And it's going to be fascinating to see if he is used early and often, if he's used at all, because right now he is currently now on the active roster again. And so Jalen Graham makes his return. Honestly, was really surprised when he got let go the first time. I really did think he was going to make the roster, and but they opted to keep Tatum Bethune. Now they got both because obviously we know that they had to, put some guys on IR. There's still one more roster spot available. Who does that go to? Do you think it's going to go to Ricky Pearsall? Do you think it's going to go to Clyde Davis? Which player do you think gets his practice window opened up by tomorrow? So the 49ers have to announce it by tomorrow. They've got two players on IR who could return, but they only got one spot. So the decision has to come down to they either only bring up one of the players, they only open the window for one of the players, or technically, I do believe that they can open the window for both. It's a 21-day window. So it's not like they have to bring them back right away, but they can open up the window for both. But I think they can make the decision of which particular one gets called up off of IR. And so I see a lot in the chat saying you got to give it to Ricky. I think that would be phenomenal. It would be great to see Ricky get that call up. It will be fascinating though because the 49ers are pretty healthy at wide receiver right now. Obviously, Debo's back, Brandon Ayuk is available, Jawan's available. So you have your core wide receivers, Conley's should be available. So you've got those guys, but on the defensive line, they are dealing with more injuries and they're dealing with a little bit more of a situation where they do kind of need the bodies and they need guys to step up. Obviously, Kevin Gibbons stepped up, for Javon Hargrave being out. Jordan Elliott left the game. So that probably tells me who will likely get the call up. It will probably be Clyde Davis, but I would love to see Ricky Pearsall finally get out there on the field, especially considering the circum and all of those things. So I would love to see Ricky. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I have to wait and see if it is Ricky getting the call up to be able to come off of IR. They're probably, man, I think they would want to bring both. I think they would want to bring both Davis and Pearsall. So we'll see. There's a little bit of roster juggling that could potentially be happening in our future. So that will definitely be one of the things that we will be looking out for. But it is time for the 49ers to face off against the Cardinals. It's a time for the 49ers to get back on track. Not only, on the season, but most importantly in the NFC. They lost 2 games to NFC opponents, one in division, one not in division. Obviously, Vikings aren't in the 49ers division. So they are already down 0-1 in the West to the Rams. We talked about it in real time. That's one of those games where you look at the end of the season and you're like, yeah, it sucks to lose in that moment of week 3. I think it sucks more when you are at the end of the year, all the games are played, win-loss record is set, and you're looking at your seeding, you're looking at where you're about to jump into the playoffs, and you just it can come down to one game. It can come down to one game, you get a win instead of an L. You jump 3 or 4 spots. Remember when the 49ers in 2019 went up to Seattle and they played the final game of the season that determined whether or not they got the 1 seed. And so It was winner of that game won the West and won the 1 seed, and the loser went to the 5th seed. So that was the difference of those types of games. So just like this, again, these games matter. They always matter. They have to matter. You have to that should be the goal of at the start of the year, one of your top goals, win the division because that guarantees that you get into the playoffs. And so they're already behind the 8 ball, and the 49ers got to get after it. So it's time. It is time for the Niners to take care of Kyler Murray and those stankin' Seahawks. This is where the standings currently sit. Let me just get this out so we can see real quick. You obviously have Seattle, who was trying to remain undefeated, but they lost last night to the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions, man, they put up a lot of points on that defense. I will say the Seattle Seahawks offense does look pretty potent. However, their defense doesn't look like it could stop whatever analogy you want to use. They just couldn't stop that Seattle offense. Kenneth Walker went absolutely berserk. So Seattle has an offense. They're dealing with, again, playing complementary football, being able to do it in all 3 phases. So the Seattle Seahawks lose their first game. And obviously you see where the 49ers stand. They are currently in second place at 2-2. And the Cardinals are an interesting team. They have, I think they're a better team than their record indicates. They're one of those teams that, again, it's going to be a game very similar to the Rams, I think, where the 49ers have the opportunity to move the ball at will, score points, but the Cardinals also do have the potential to put up points as well with Kyler Murray coming back off the ACL. He's ready to go. You've got Marvin Harrison and, James Conner. You got all those guys. I think they're down McBride. But that's a team that you can't sleep on. And especially for whatever reason, we know these division games, they're not the same as like regular season games. Or outside the division, I should say, just because you see them twice a year. You guys know how each other are built. They know how they're constructed, and it for whatever reason, the Cardinals have always played the 49ers tough for the most part. Now, it always hasn't been that case, and I wouldn't say it's been like that since Brock has been under center. But I remember the time when the San Francisco 49ers were supposed to steamroll the Cardinals, and they came into town with Colt McCoy, and I don't even remember who their running back was, and they cooked the 49ers in their home stadium. So there's just something about these matchups that you always have a level of confidence, but you never know, like, if those particular teams are going to have your number on that day. So the Cardinals definitely aren't going to be a team that I want to sleep on. And obviously, heading into a short week right after that, you have the Seahawks. So we'll see. We will see. I can't get that game out my mouth. It's burned into my memory. It is burned into my brain because that was the Drake Kirkpatrick game. That was the probably one of my all-time favorite 49ers, Josh Norman. Just a stellar performance. Yeah, those were the days. Oh gosh, good times. Good times. But nonetheless, Brock Purdy is playing really well. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to hear what Drew Brees had to say. I'm honestly shocked that it took this long for Drew Brees to really give an assessment of Brock Purdy, because a lot of people talk about Brock Purdy. They like to, some people, not all people. We know not everyone thinks Brock is a great quarterback, but the people who do tend to discuss Drew Brees when discussing about Brock. A lot of that has to do with their size, right? Brock isn't a physically imposing quarterback. Drew Brees wasn't a physically imposing quarterback. He was 6 foot. But they both had, uh, both overlooked I guess actually Drew Brees has overlooked. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure he's a 3rd round draft pick. Yeah. So wait a second. 2nd round draft pick. Drew Brees was a 2nd round draft pick. So keep that in mind. Yes, they might have similar heights, but Drew Brees was still a high 2nd round draft pick, where Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. So at least, Drew had the cachet heading into the league. Like, Drew was supposed to be a good quarterback, right? As the league would say. Where based on where Brock was drafted, you're not supposed to be a good quarterback and be taken the last pick in the draft. That's not how it works. But they're compared a lot because of, Drew Brees' size and similar play style and, accuracy, his ability to process all those different types of things, similar intangibles, things like that. So it was really cool to hear Drew Brees talk about Brock. And he again, I love it. I love all the former players. They all talk about intangibles. Huh. It's crazy. It's crazy how former players put weight into intangibles, and the people who have never played this sport in their life yet think they are experts at player evaluation discredit intangible. It's a wonderful phenomenon in regards to player evaluation. Is people who typically play talk about the intangible aspects inside the human being that makes them great. People who typically haven't played this game, and this isn't everyone. I'm not throwing everyone who hasn't played into this bucket. I'm just saying typically is they focus on height, weight, speed. Height, weight, speed, height, weight, speed, height, weight, speed. Oh, they don't have height, weight, speed. They're not good, right? Oh, they don't get height, weight, speed. They're not good. It's because there's an intangible quality that it takes to be great, and especially at the quarterback position. So Drew was talking about Brock's confidence and just talking about how this kid is unflappable. He was kind of built for this. He was kind of built for this scrutiny. He was built to be the underdog. He went to Idaho State, not a glamorous school. It's still D1 college, but not the glamour and the hype of, the LSUs, the Floridas, the SEC. Still respectable conference, D1, still a big time program, but never the program that was, the best or the shiniest or the coolest. And they were always the underdog. And did I say Idaho? My brain is on one today. Iowa State Cyclones. You guys know I know where he went to school. But regardless of that, if he went to Idaho State, then he would definitely fit into a different mold there. But with him going to Iowa State. I don't know if you guys saw my now I'm on a complete tangent. I don't know if you guys saw my Fred Warner video today. I called him Dre Greenlaw. That's where my brain's at today. So bear with me, people. Iowa State, and he talked about how kind of the process of being an underdog, being in that situation, always being counted out, kind of really set the tone for like where he is now. He's a guy who's overly scrutinized. He's a guy that a lot of people doubt. Uh, he's a guy that a lot of people don't believe in based on what they see, the eye test, right? He doesn't fit the mold of your uh, prototypical quarterback. All right, I don't know what that is, but um, it. I loved hearing it because when you when you listen to guys who've played this game at a high level, they talk about the game differently, and they pinpoint typically a lot of things that are like, even with Steve Young, when he talks about Brock, he still talks about the intangible quality. Like when I went to go see that, they had Brock Purdy, Jeff Garcia, Steve Young, Alex Smith. They had this panel for the Dwight Clark event, and those guys just talked for 2 hours about playing quarterback. And they even had some young football player who's going to Notre Dame to play quarterback, and they asked him about what makes a great quarterback. All four of them talked about intangibles. So again, the point that I'm making is that I love hearing Drew Brees point to Brock Purdy's intangibles as being, something that he's like, this guy, he's got the confidence, he's got the ability to withstand these storms, the faith, all of those things. And that's what we're seeing out of Brock too. I think these last 2 weeks. These last 2 weeks, you see Brock pushing this team forward, pulling this team forward. He is the offense. And I really do think that isn't seen by a lot because there's going to be a segment of people who automatically chalk up whatever success that Brock Purdy has to Kyle Shanahan, which is, again, an idiotic way of evaluating football, but it is what it is. That's just how people do it. Now, I'm not saying that system doesn't dictate. You got to be in a good system. The system doesn't matter how good you are. If you're in a system, sometimes the system can derail you. Doesn't matter if it's in football, doesn't matter if it's in your work life. Like if you work for a company that is, you know, top to bottom, got everything figured out, systemized, there's a process for everything, and everyone just learns the process, fits in, and everything runs smoothly. And then you go to a similar company doing the same thing, but they don't have that. They don't have the process. Everything's inefficient. There's tons of mistakes. It doesn't matter where you're at. You need a good system. Like it's very rare that you can elevate a poor system. Like if a system's poor, everything about it's going to be poor. So with Brock, I see him in a good scheme and making the scheme even better. And the comparisons you can go to is looking at what Jimmy Garoppolo did versus what Brock Purdy's doing. It's just completely different. And he is now not only executing the scheme at arguably its highest levels, but he's playing at a level right now that he's doing what everyone has challenged him to be that guy, to be the driving force, to to be the tractor and not be the trailer. So I'm pretty happy with where he's at. I really am. And I think if he can continue to play at that level, uh, the 49ers are going to have a shot no matter what. Even if there are some issues with special teams and maybe defense is inconsistent, if Brock can continue to make the plays that he's making, it's going to be really hard to knock this team out. Nigel says, does Brian Greasy get any credit for developing Purdy? He should. He should. Because from everything that I've heard, he is a huge reason why the 49ers have Brock Purdy right now. And also, too, I think he is. I really do. I think it's really beneficial to have a quarterback in the room teaching you who has played the position at a high level. So I think, when you look at some of the other coaches that they've had, I don't know what their quarterback background was, but I think there's something to having a guy in the room coaching you up who can speak to you from a place where, hey, I've done this before. I've been in the quicksand. I've been down 3 touchdowns, and you know what I'm saying? I think Greasy deserves a lot of credit for sure because he was able to identify Brock early on and was probably the reason why they drafted him and instead of trying to get him as a free agent. So yeah, I do think Greasy deserves a lot of credit. But at the end of the day, it's one game at a time. And right now, it's the Cardinals. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to drop some questions in the chat. Oh, Scangarello. That was the name I was searching for. But yeah, I do think that we're only seeing. I feel like maybe we've seen this team at its peak at like 65%. I don't believe that we've seen offense, defense, special teams operating as close to 100% capacity as they're capable of. I think the offense has definitely performed at its highest, probably in the range of they've probably gotten as close to like maybe 80% of their capacity. I think the offense will be capped. They won't be able to reach that 100 because they don't have Christian McCaffrey. I now this is me purely speculating. Purely 100% speculating. But when George Kittle was asked about what's with the struggles with the 49ers offense in the red zone, to me, I felt like he wanted to say we don't have Christian McCaffrey on the field. But he also can't say that because again, it's like it takes away from Brock, it takes away from Kyle, it takes away from him, it takes away from Debo, it takes away from the offense, it takes away from the team. It puts more emphasis onto uh CMC not being there. But I really felt like when he was asked that question, I could see his mind say, because we don't have CMC on the field. And the point being is CMC creates so much gravity. One of the reasons why I wanted the 49ers to trade for Christian McCaffrey, because CMC has the Steph Curry effect. He has the gravity. If he goes out into the flat, there are like 3 players keyed on CMC going out into the flat. And so what Kyle is able to do is he's able to take the gravity of CMC and start keying on how defenses are keying on CMC and start building game plans off of that. When you have a piece who moves the defense, you can start playing games behind it. And obviously, CMC can do it on his own, but when you can also play off of CMC, that also changes the dynamic. It changes what maybe boxes look like around the goal line. Obviously, CMC needs barely any wiggle room. He's gonna find his way um, to squeak through. Obviously, Jordan Mason's been doing a phenomenal job, but I do think that the offense, we won't see it at its full potential until Christian McCaffrey comes back. And, I will say, I don't know if you guys have heard this yet, but Trent Williams went on to the Rich Eisen show, and at least Trent said something that was optimistic. He didn't say anything that was definitive or anything like that, but he did say that in speaking to Christian McCaffrey, CMC's definitely planning on playing this year. I know there's a lot of hesitation with CMC and if he will return this year and if he will actually play. But based on what Trent said, what Christian told him is that he definitely plans on playing this year. They don't know he said we don't know when. We don't have a timeline on that, but he said he's absolutely going to try to play this year. So, and I do think that is the truth. I think that is, you know, where we want to be. But again, we got to be smart with CMC. But the point of talking about CMC was, getting like treating each individual phase as like its own little meter. And I think defensively, we've gone pretty high, close up to 100%, meaning 60 minutes playing your brand of football for 60 minutes. I think they've gotten pretty close to 100. I think that game against the Patriots was a pretty solid one, but there's still definitely room to improve, areas to get better. And so they're getting up there. I think the offense has been the highest performing group out of them all. I think right now the special teams is the lowest performing group out of them all. They got to get them all at similar levels. They all got to get them performing at their highest capacity, most efficient outputs. And so the point of that, what I'm saying is that or not everyone, there was a bit of an echo chamber when the 49ers were 1-2, as if they were performing at their highest level and getting beat. That's not what was happening. They were performing at a low level and getting beat. That was part of the problem. That was the concern, is they were playing down to their competition. They weren't executing to their level. They weren't at capacity. They weren't at peak efficiency. Because when this team is playing their brand, playing their style and doing it at the highest level, they're very difficult to beat. So that's why, for me, it's hard to hit the panic button on a team where they're not performing their best. They're not executing to their best. And which is, yes, it's concerning, but what they're capable of. So you have to keep those variables open and understanding that it's a long season and that they're going to keep trying to raise those levels as each and every game goes by. So I do think that, especially against the Cardinals and the Seahawks, you got to raise those levels. You have to raise the levels because you can't lose these games. The 49ers now, again, being 0-1 in the West, they have to have an urgency. And not saying that they didn't at the beginning of the year, but I think Brock, like what we were talking about earlier, didn't really have that urgency. At least it felt that way. And not that he wasn't trying. It was just like the it was off. It was off against the Vikings, and you can credit their defense or whatever you want to credit, but it was just off. They're back. The offense is back to rising their levels. They're getting close. You get Debo back, you get Kittle back. You can see they're rising. They're rising. And Bubbly says, yeah, even the Pats game wasn't even their best. It wasn't. They could have scored 50, in my opinion. They should have scored 50, in my opinion. They could have scored 60 if they played their best ball. So that's the point. It's like we can evaluate them for who they are now, but we also have to be able to project out what we think they are. And how they are playing right now, to me, isn't who they are. And I think that over time and getting more reps and getting more games and all those things, they will be moving closer and closer and closer and closer to the team they are. So, and these next 2 weeks against the Cardinals and against the Seahawks are the perfect opportunity for them to be able to get this thing going. I cannot say enough. Cannot say enough how these first 4 weeks are the preseason. And I do appreciate that many more are echoing the sentiment because it's the truth. But people are also acting like they should be in their peak form as well. And it's just not the case. It's just not how it works. What did the Ravens start 0-2? Oh, something crazy. They started 0-2. Now they're 2-2. It's just how it works, man. It's the early start of the year. It's just not the same as it once was. DJ, what's up, my guy? So smash that like button, Brad. You're speaking facts. Let's go, SDS. Woo woo. Good to see DJ in here. I haven't seen you in a while, my guy. Hopefully you're doing well. OG SDS in the building. But the hope, the logic, the tape, it all tells you that this team can be better really than what they are. So this week against the Cardinals, it's honestly it's honestly a pretty big game, I think, because obviously you don't want to be 2-3, and then you don't want to be 2-3 if we pull this back up. Let me get this down for a little bit. You don't want to be, you would fall below the Cardinals. So the Cardinals would have the upper hand on the division because they beat you, and the 49ers haven't won in division. So they would automatically fall below the Cardinals. The Rams are 1-3, but their one win is against the 49ers. Like you have to win this game. Is it a must win? I would say it's not a must win because you could overcome a loss to the Cardinals here. But it's as close to a must win as I think a must win can be. Just like it was last week. Like the Cardinals wasn't a must win, or excuse me, the game against the Patriots wasn't a must win. It was a must win for your sanity. It was a must win to restore your energy. It was a must win to restore your confidence. That's why it was a must win. It wasn't a must win because beating an AFC team is going to help you. It was more of a must win because they needed to get their mojo back on track. And so that's what that week was to me. And now you really got to turn it up against the Cardinals. You really got to turn it up against the Cardinals. And I think this is where they really do treat they really got to treat this as that. It's a mini playoff game. Week 5, week 6, little mini playoff games. You got to get the dubs here. You got to take advantage. Can't let these ones slip. You already let one slip. You let your one NFC West game slip, and that was to the Rams. So you can't do that here. You can't do that here. You got it. You got to get it. You absolutely got to get it. But again, appreciate everyone for tapping in today. I'm going to get out of here a little bit early, but appreciate you guys as always. Smash that like button on your way out. And as always, we'll be doing lives every day. Appreciate you guys. Shout out to SDS. I'm out of here for now. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it.